The lonely farmer's quiet life. The wind crossed the fields like a careful hand, and the small moons looked pale above the yellow crops. On this quiet planet, Eli Stone lived alone. He woke before the suns, he checked the water lines, and he spoke to the machines like old friends. The soil here was stubborn, the sky dry, but Eli was patient. He had learned to fix almost anything, and he kept the farm alive with wire tape and calm hands. Nearest town was a ridge of metal huts and dusty streets, a day's ride from his land. Sometimes he went there for fuel or nuts and bolts, sometimes for seeds and salt. He did not talk much, but he listened. The shopkeeper called him farmer, the kids called him sir, and the old man only nodded. In the tavern, people told stories of pirates, lost ships, and rich worlds closer to the core. They laughed and fought and lost money and cards. Eli drank water, counted his change, and went home before midnight. At night the farm spoke in little clicks and sighs. Pumps breathed, drones glided on thin legs, and tiny lights blinked in the dark. Sometimes Eli sat on the porch and watched the sky open. He could name all the bright threads up there, the shipping lanes, the patrol routes, the slow shape of a passing freighter. He knew those lines too well, and he did not like that he knew them. So he looked down at his hands, at the dirt under his nails, and he thought about the next repair. People in town whispered that Eli had once been a pilot or a scout or something worse. They said he knew how to play risk like a song and how to read a liar like a book. They never asked, and he never offered a word. A rumor without proof turns into a small legend, and legends make simple men careful. So they kept their distance, and Eli kept his peace. On the fourth night of the red month, the wind fell still. Eli checked the perimeter fence and oiled the drone joints. He ate stew, washed the bowl, and shut the door against the cold. He was reaching for the light switch when the radio woke. It did not crackle or scratch. It sang like a quiet bell. Green line ran across the small screen, and then letters appeared. Eli Stone. Invitation delivered. Confirm receipt. The radio typed without a voice. Eli froze, his hand on the switch, his eyes flat and careful. He had not given this frequency to the town, and no one out here used such clean code. A long breath left him, and he pulled a stool to the table. He typed, received, and waited. Galactic Tournament Privateer Rendezvous. At coordinates set R Delta Station. Orbiting Red Giant Rook. Entry granted. By former associate marker prize pool. Non-standard. The radio wrote Eli read the line twice, then a third time. Privateer meant big players, not the drunk card games in the tavern. A former associate marker meant someone had spoken his old name in a voice the system respected. He did not like that. He did not like it at all. The radio printed the prize list, simple and cold. Bars of auric iron, a block of memory crystal, a rare seed bank with pre-war gene locks, and one living companion. The last line paused in his mind the way a knife pauses before it bites the board. He typed, decline prize. Component 4, and hit send. For a moment, nothing moved, not the lights, not the wind outside, not his heart. Then the radio replied, tournament rules allow prize exchange after win. Attendance still requested. He closed his eyes, and the farm came back to him. The warm smell of the machine barn, the soft creak of the water tower, the quiet. He could stay. He could turn off the radio. He could bury this message under a pile of spare parts and forget, but in his chest a small sound began, not loud, not proud. Just steady, it sounded like the first tick of a clock after a long winter. He opened his eyes and he stood, Eli packed, like a man who had done it many times. A plain bag, a coil of cable, a roll of sealant, a toolkit, a short gun with no shine. He wrote a note for the drone control, a loop of orders to keep the farm alive while he was gone. He set the irrigation to slow to stretch the water if he stayed away longer than planned. He turned off the porch light, then turned it on again, as if to leave a candle for himself. Dawn came as a thin line of heat on the horizon. Eli walked to the old ship in the barn, a ship too clean for a farmer, a ship that did not belong to this world. Its skin was dull and strong, its engines slept like big animals. He ran a hand along the hull, and dust came away. He said nothing, but his face looked like a man greeting a ghost. The cockpit smelled of oil and ozone. He sat, and the seat fit him as if it had been waiting. The panels woke in soft steps. The lights rose in a slow wave like dawn. Eli checked the gauges, the fuel, the filters, the tiny hairline crack he had marked last year. He patched it with a careful touch, a breath and a strip of smart tape. He powered the core and the ship hummed under his feet when the hangar door split. Gray morning poured in, dust lifted like mist, and the farm looked small in the square of light. He could see the rows of crops, the water tower, the bent wind vane that he always meant to fix. He could see the porch where he had watched the sky and told himself he did not miss it. He could see his life, neat and narrow, like a path cut through tall grass. He closed the doors behind the ship, and the ship rose. The ride to the upper air was calm. Clouds rolled under his wings like slow animals, and the blue turned thin, then black. Stars pricked through, and the planet curved away, a coin of rock and light. Eli kept his hand steady, his face empty, but his eyes were not empty. They watched every number, every line, every whisper of the engine. He set the course to R Delta, and the ship aligned with the distant fire of a dying sun. He had told himself many things in the quiet years. He had told himself he was done with games and men who smiled with knives behind their teeth. He had told himself the farm was enough, the silence enough, the repair of a broken pump good day's work. But as the stars lengthened into soft roads and the drive took hold, he felt the truth walk back into his body. He was good at reading tables, at listening to the breath of a room, at knowing when a move was honest or a lie. He was good at staying quiet until the moment a word mattered, and then speaking only that word. He ate a bar and drank from the recycler. He checked the nav twice, then a third time. He looked at the prize list again and let his eyes rest on the last item, the living companion. He did not know what shape that prize would take: a singer, a fighter, a pet with a collar, a person with a number. The thought made his jaw set, a slow, hard line. He remembered too many rooms where laughter hid sharp things. The ship crossed empty space like a needle through dark cloth. Ahead, the red giant Aruk swelled, a huge eye without a lid orbiting it, small as a speck and bright as a jewel was the station. Its rings turned, its docks opened and closed like gills, delicate and alive. Traffic lines shimmered, and from far away the place looked like a quiet crown. Eli knew better. Crowns are made of metal and pressure, and someone always bleeds to keep them bright. He signaled the Station, and the station signaled back. With formal words and cold manners, he followed the lane, let tugs pull him, and watched the hull camera feed with lazy eyes and sharp attention. Docking. Clamps touched his ship with soft clicks and pressure equalized. He stood stretched and felt the old aches greet him like old friends. He took his bag, strapped the gun under his jacket, and walked to the lock. The door opened with a sigh that sounded almost human. The corridor smelled like clean air and money. Floors gleamed, walls listened, and cameras stared without blinking. He passed a mirror and almost did not know the man looking back. A farmer's jacket, a pilot's stride, a face with too many quiet miles. He did not slow, he did not speed up. He moved like a clock hand. At the lift, he pressed the button for the private tier, the one where voices never rise and deals never die. As the lift climbed, he thought of the farm, of the porch light he left on, of the bent wind vein catching the morning. He thought of the town and the rumors and the children shouting in the dust. He thought of the radio line that sang like a bell and the word invitation, which can mean welcome or trap. When the doors opened, music drifted like smoke, soft and expensive. Eli stepped out into a hall of glass and gold where shadows hid behind smiles. The tournament room waited ahead, and something else waited with it, thin as a blade and just as bright. He adjusted the strap of his bag and set his shoulders. The air was cool, the lights were warm, and the feeling in his chest was neither fear nor joy, but a narrow road between them. He walked toward the door, and the guards watched him with the kind of interest men give a quiet storm on the horizon. Eli lifted his hand. The door recognized the mark sent by the radio, and the lock slid. He did not look back, not at the station window, not at the distant red star, not at the long black sea he had crossed. He went in, and the game waited, patient as a hunter and old as hunger. The Galactic poker table. The poker hall was not just a room, it was a floating palace in the cold mouth of space. It circled the dying red giant Aruk like a moth around a lantern. Light from the star spilled through giant crystal windows, turning every surface gold and blood red. Walls shimmered with slow holograms, shifting between alien landscapes and scenes of past games. Each table was a battlefield, and each player carried their own kind of weapon, some in the form of cards, others in the weight of their stare. Eli stepped through the wide door, and the room seemed to measure him in one breath. Tall insectoid dealers clicked their mandibles in quiet greetings, their long hands moving with surgical precision over decks of glowing cards. At one table, a scaled giant in ceremonial armor pushed a stack of chips as high as his shoulder, his eyes unblinking. At another, a pale, gas-breathing creature shuffled with 4 hands at once, each hand hiding a different emotion. A slow murmur moved through the hall. Humans were rare here, and human farmers almost never walked into the private tier. A reptilian attendant with golden eye frills approached. Name, it hissed. Voice like dry leaves. Eli Stone, he said simply. A faint shimmer passed over the reptile's eyes, a sign of recognition or suspicion. It gestured toward a table in the center. This one is yours, human. Your seat is important. The central table was shaped like a star, with 7 points, each point a seat for a player. The dealer here was not like the others. She was a tall machine, humanoid but with a glass chest full of swirling silver dust. Her voice was smooth, calm, and without warmth. 7 players, she said. 7 rounds highest. Take at the end wins the pool. Side. Wagers allowed, stakes, flexible. The last word lingered. Eli understood. Flexible meant that here you could bet. More than chips, and sometimes you lost. More than you planned. One by one, the other players took their seats. To Eli's left sat a short fur-covered alien with eyes like black marbles, its grin showing too many teeth. To his right, a tall being with skin like polished stone, its hands folded as if in prayer. The next seats filled with shapes from stories, a woman whose skin shimmered like oil, a thick-armed miner from the asteroid belts, and finally a warlord, whose face Eli recognized from the prize list announcement. The warlord's armor was deep green with scars that told of many battles. 2 small drones floated at his shoulders, recording everything. His gaze slid over Eli like a blade, checking for soft spots. You are far from your dirt fields, human, the warlord said. Eli said nothing, which was answer enough. The dealer dealt the first hand, cards glowing faintly as they slid across the table. Eli's fingers touched the surface. The cards were warm, alive with some kind of energy. He played carefully, not pushing too hard, just watching. The fur-covered alien blinked in rapid patterns when it bluffed. The stone-kin giant tapped its thumb when holding a strong hand. The oily-skinned woman always bet big after a win, riding her own momentum. Eli filed these details away, quiet as a shadow. Between rounds, servers moved silently, offering drinks in crystal spheres and plates of food that floated until touched. The smell of alien spices and rare flowers drifted through the air. In the distance, the sound of another game ending came like a soft gasp, followed by the cold silence of someone who had lost too much. By the 4th round, Eli's chip pile was small but steady. The warlord had grown impatient, his bets large and his glare sharper. He seemed to be playing against Eli more than anyone else. Finally, the 6th round, the cards came to Eli like old friends. 2 high stars and a hidden flame. The table felt the shift. The warlord smiled, a slow, cruel curve. He pushed forward not just chips, but a small golden token carved with a strain crest. A server whispered the translation to Eli. It was a claim marker, the kind used for property or people. Eli's eyes moved to the prize list screen on the wall. The living companion line glowed faintly, as if it knew he matched the warlord's bed in chips. Steady, the fur-covered alien hissed in a tongue Eli didn't know, dropping out of the hand. The others followed until it was just Eli and the warlord. Cards turned, chips moved, breaths held. The warlord leaned forward, sure of his victory, until Eli laid down his hand. The dealer's silver dust swirled. Brighter winner, Eli Stone, she said. Without emotion, the warlord's eyes narrowed and his drones froze in place. From a side door, 2 armored attendants entered, leading someone between them. She was tall, her skin a faint silver blue, her eyes bright as a blad's edge. Chains rested on her wrists, more for ceremony than restraint, but still wrong in every way. The warlord sneered, take her, farmer, she will not last long in your hands. Eli stood, walked over, and without a word unlatched the chains. He didn't ask her name, he simply said, you can walk beside me or leave. Her eyes narrowed, not in distrust, but in disbelief. She rubbed her wrists, glanced at the Warlord and then stepped toward Eli. The hall murmured a low storm of voices. The warlord's face was a silent promise of trouble. Eli collected his chips, the golden token, and walked toward the exit. The silver blue woman followed. Silent but alert, they reached the lift. And only then did she speak, her voice low but steady. You're not like the others, she said. Eli pressed the button. The lift doors closed. No, he replied, I'm not. Outside in the docking bay, Eli's ship waited. The woman looked at it, then at him. Behind them, deep in the hall, the warlord's drones recorded every step they took. Eli noticed and didn't care. He had won more than a hand of cards tonight, and the warlord had lost more than he knew. The alien girl. The docking bay was not quiet. It breathed with the hum of engines, the hiss of pressure locks, the distant clang of tools against metal. Eli stepped through the checkpoint with the silver blue woman at his side. She moved like a shadow, silent but aware of every sound, every motion. The guards at the doors pretended not to stare, but their eyes followed her like magnets. Her name was not yet his to know. She had not offered it, and he had not asked. Some things are not taken, they are given. She was no trembling captive, no broken spirit. Her back was straight, her steps balanced, her gaze sharp. But beneath that strength was something colder, the weight of a person who had been claimed too many times. At the far end of the bay, Eli's ship waited in the shadow of a bulk freighter. Its dull hull reflected almost no light. He kept it that way for a reason. They had almost reached it when the air shifted. It was not sound that warned him first. It was movement in the corners. Two figures stepped from behind a stack of crates, another from the service hatch above. Their eyes gleamed, their weapons low but ready. The tallest one, a thin alien with skin like burnt copper, grinned. Warlord says you owe him a prize. Farmer. Eli didn't stop walking. She's not his prize, he said, voice calm. Copper-skinned man clicked his teeth. Everything here belongs to someone. The woman beside Eli tilted her head slightly, as if she had heard this line too many times before. Her lips curved, not into a smile but into a shape that said she was ready for whatever happened next. Eli's hand moved to his side, slow, without drawing yet. You got one chance, he said. The copper-skinned man laughed. I think you've got it. Backward, the ambush broke like a sudden wave. The first attacker lunged from the crates, a blade flashing under the bay lights. Eli stepped sideways, caught the wrist and twisted. A bone popped in. The blade clattered to the floor. Before the sound had died, the second came from above, dropping with a shock baton. Silver blue woman moved, her chain fray wrists catching the attacker mid-fall. She used his momentum, slammed him against the crate, and the baton rolled away. The copper-skinned leader hesitated. That was his mistake. Eli drew in one motion, the short gun quiet but final. A hiss of energy cut through the space between them, and the copper-skinned man staggered, not dead, but unwilling to continue. He spat on the floor and backed away. You made a bad enemy tonight, farmer. Eli holstered the weapon. Add him to the list, he said. They reached the ship without another word. Inside, the air was warmer, softer. The woman paused at the threshold, her eyes scanning the cockpit, the controls, the small bunk in the back. This is yours, she asked. It is, Eli said, starting the pre-flight sequence. She touched the wall like someone feeling the bones of a creature. It's fast, she said quietly. Eli didn't answer. He had noticed she didn't sound surprised, only interested, as if speed might be important soon. When the engines came alive, the bay doors opened, revealing the black spread of space. The station shrank behind them, its lights like a nest of stars. The woman strapped herself into the co-pilot seat without being told, her hands finding the harness like muscle memory. "You've done this before," Eli said. "I've done many things before," she replied. Her voice carried no pride, only fact. They traveled in silence for a while, the hum of the engines a steady heartbeat. Finally she spoke. "My name is Vera." Eli glanced at her but kept his eyes mostly on the nav display. "Eli," he said. "I know," she replied, and her gaze held him for a moment longer. Then comfort aloud. "You freed me," she said after a pause. "I just unlocked the chains," Eli answered. "No," she said, shaking her head slowly. "Most unlocked chains only to put on new ones." Eli didn't respond. "There were some truths you didn't argue with." She looked out at the stars, her expression unreadable. "You think you've walked away from him," she said, meaning the warlord, "but you haven't." Eli didn't ask how she knew. He didn't need to. He could feel the weight of that truth settling already. The warlord was not the kind to let an insult fade. Eli had embarrassed him in the one place he ruled the table, and then taken something he valued. It didn't matter that Vera wasn't a thing to be owned. Men like that didn't care about the difference. They reached Eli's farm world in the deep dark of night. The ship touched down among the fields, its landing lights casting long shadows over the rows. Vera stepped onto the soil and looked around. "It's quiet," she said. Eli nodded. "That's the point." In the days that followed, Vera stayed, though Eli had given her no order to. She moved through the fields, learning the tools, feeding the machines, watching the horizon with the same sharp eyes she had in the docking bay. She never asked him why he played the game, why he risked being there at all, and Eli never asked her what it had been like before. Some silences are heavier than words, and sometimes it's better to carry them together. But neither of them saw the small drone high above the fields. It drifted in the night air, its lens cold and patient, and far away in the warlord's chamber, a feed began to play, the image of a silver-blue woman standing beside a human farmer, both unaware. The warlord smiled without warmth. "This isn't over," he said. "Secrets in the fields." Morning on Eli's world came softly. Two pale suns rose over the hills, turning the crops gold. Thin mist clung to the fields like it didn't want to leave. The only sound was the hum of irrigation pipes and the distant click of a drone sweeping for pests. Vera walked between the rows, her fingers brushing the plants. The soil here felt different, lighter, freer, and she wondered if it was the same for people. She had been on many worlds, but none where the air smelled of wet metal and growing things. At the same time, Eli was already working, a wrench in one hand, a stubborn pump before him. "Pressures low," he said without looking up. Very crouched beside him, curious. "How do you fix it?" "By knowing where not to hit it," he replied, tightening a bolt. Without effort, days passed and she learned the rhythm of the farm. Drones moved like insects with glowing eyes. Old machines patched with mismatched parts somehow ran smoother than new ones, and Eli seemed to know everything about them, as if each had a heartbeat he could hear. But when she Asked about the ship, about why it was so fast, about why his aim in the docking bay had been so exact. He always shifted the talk back to crops or weather. One evening, a low growl came from the sky. Vera looked up, but Eli was already watching, his gaze narrowing. A ship, small, fast, was passing high overhead. Too high to land, too slow to be just passing through. Eli didn't speak until it was gone. Survey run, he said. From the warlord, Vera asked. Maybe, Eli replied, or maybe someone worse. That night Vera couldn't sleep. She stepped outside, the moon's painting silver lines over the fields. From the porch she could see Eli sitting near the edge of the property with a small device in his hand. He tapped it twice, and faint blue lights appeared in the distance. Motion sensors hidden in the crops. He didn't notice her watching, or maybe he didn't care. It was the first time she realized the farm wasn't just a farm, it was a perimeter, a defense line, and Eli had been guarding it long before she arrived. The next day a stranger came, a tall man with a scar across his cheek and the kind of smile that hides sharp things. He arrived in a dust-covered skimmer, parking far enough from the farmhouse to show respect or caution. Long time. Stone, the man said. Eli didn't shake his hand. Not long enough, Eli replied. They spoke in low voices. Vera couldn't hear, but she saw the way Eli's shoulders tensed when the man left. His skimmer disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind a silence that didn't feel like peace. Later Vera asked, "Who was that?" "Someone I used to know," Eli said, "and now someone I hope not to see again." It wasn't an answer, but she didn't push. Still, she noticed he cleaned his gun that night, slow and careful, before setting it within arm's reach of his bed. The following morning, they were repairing a fence post when one of the drones returned. Its lens cracked, its casing scorched. It dropped something at Eli's feet, a metal fragment, sharp and black with a symbol burned into it. Vera's eyes narrowed. "That's the warlord's mark," she said. Eli nodded, his expression unreadable. "He's not patient," Eli said quietly. "And he's getting closer." For the first time, Vera wondered if staying here was truly safe. She had been hunted before, but now the hunt was coming for both of them and Eli. Eli wasn't just defending a farm, he was preparing for something bigger, something that had been building for years. She could feel it in the air, a storm waiting just beyond the horizon. That night Eli checked the perimeter twice. The wind carried the faint smell of fuel from somewhere far away. Vera stood on the porch, her eyes on the dark hills. Somewhere out there ships were waiting, and in the silence she asked herself the question she hadn't dared before. What exactly was Eli Stone before he became a farmer? The hunters arrive. The night was not quiet. Engines roared above the hills, cutting through the wind like blades. Vera's eyes snapped open. She was already moving before the sound reached the farmhouse. Outside, dust and light swirled in the dark as 3 drop ships descended into the fields. Their hulls bore no flags, but Eli didn't need them. He knew the warlord's mark when he saw it. The first ship landed hard, its ramp slamming down. Mercenaries spilled out, armor patched together from old wars, rifles humming with charge. They moved fast, fanning out toward the house. Eli was already in the machine barn, hands pulling the cover off an old farming drone. It looked harmless until the front split open to reveal twin barrels. "Wake up, old friend," Eli muttered. Hitting the activation key, the drone rolled into the open field, sensors locking onto the nearest intruder. Hiss, a flash, one mercenary went down. Armor sparking, Very darted from the shadows, a long wrench in her hands. She swung once hard. The impact rang like a bell, and the man dropped without a sound. Another lunged for her, but she spun low, sweeping his legs from under him. Her movements were sharp, clean. She fought like someone who had no patience for wasted motion. From the second dropship, a larger figure emerged, heavy plates of armor, a cannon slung over one shoulder. His voice boomed across the field. Stone, you have something that doesn't belong to you. Eli stepped into the open, gun in hand. She doesn't belong to anyone, he said. The armored giant laughed. Everyone belongs to someone, even you. Farmer, the third ship stayed back, its light scanning the horizon. Eli noticed it wasn't here to fight, it was here to watch. That meant the warlord was watching too. He moved fast, setting off two hidden charges buried beneath the crops. Explosions lit the night, throwing dirt and fire into the air. Mercenaries scattered, shouting. The drone swept its guns in a wide arc, forcing them into the narrow path Eli had left open. Vera ran to him, breath sharp in her chest. They'll just keep coming, she said, only if they can walk away from tonight, Eli replied. She didn't ask what he meant. She could already see it in his eyes. The mercenaries regrouped, forming a tight circle, but before they could advance, a sudden high-pitched whine cut through the air. From the tree in a hidden aught turret came to life, its shots ripped through the circle, breaking it apart in seconds. The survivors fell back toward their ships, dragging the wounded. The armored giant stayed a moment longer, his visor locked on Eli. This is just the opening hand, he said, voice heavy with promise. Tell your warlord he's holding the wrong cards, Eli replied. The giant said nothing more. He just turned and boarded the ship. Engines roared, and within moments the night was empty again, but it wasn't truly quiet. Smoke drifted over the fields, glowing red in the moonlight. Dirt was torn, crops burned, sensors broken. Vera stood beside Eli, both breathing hard. You knew they'd find us, she said. Eli nodded once. And now they know what it costs to try. High above, invisible the dark, a lone drone hovered. It followed the retreating ships at a safe distance and far away in a chamber lined with steel and shadow. The warlord leaned forward in his chair, watching the feed. Enough testing, he said. Next time I go myself, the last stand. The warlord did not wait long. 3 nights after the raid, the horizon burned. Very saw it first, a deep red glow crawling across the sky. It wasn't dawn, it was engines, big ones, the kind that carried not just soldiers but whole walls of fire. Eli didn't panic. He had been ready since the night they'd left the station. The farm was no longer a farm, it was a game board, and he had set every piece himself. Drones patrolled the outer fields, hidden aught turrets lay under irrigation pipes, and the barn doors had been rebuilt with reinforced plating. Even the scarecrows in the far rows had been fitted with motion sensors and flash bombs. Every corner of the land was part of the plan. Vera moved through the yard with a rifle slung over her shoulder. You really think we can hold this place? She asked. Eli was checking a detonator. I don't need to hold it, he said. I just need him to make the wrong move. The first ship came low, scattering dust and snapping crops. Behind it 2 more. Hovered, holding back, waiting. The warlord wanted Eli to think they were cautious. Eli smiled faintly. 2. Careful, he muttered. The ship touched down, ramp lowering with a hiss. Warlord stepped out, tall in black and green armor, his helmet shaped like a predator's skull. Behind him, his personal guard spread out in a crescent there, weapons gleaming in the twin moonlight. Stone, the warlord's voice carried over the field like a blade scraping metal. You play well at the table, but here you have no cards left. Eli didn't move from the porch. I've still got a hand, he said. Then play it. The warlord snarled and gestured forward. The guard advanced, careful, 2 careful. 1 stepped on a crop row that looked harmless. A sudden boom threw him into the air, smoke covering the flank. Another guard ducked into a ditch for cover. The ditch collapsed, revealing a nest of buried stun mines. They went off in a blue wave, dropping 2 more where they stood, very fired from the bomb loft, picking off anyone who tried to break formation. She moved fast between windows, never staying in one spot long enough to be pinned. The warlord's jaw tightened. You hide behind toys, farmer, he shouted. Eli's voice was calm. I use what's on the table. Warlord's main force surged forward. Eli let them, then hit the second detonator. The ground between the first and second crop rows erupted in a wall of fire, splitting the attackers in 2. Confusion spread through their ranks. That was when Eli moved. He slipped into the smoke, striking quick and vanishing before they could react. To anyone watching, it wasn't a battle. It was a card trick, each move setting up the next, each feint hiding the real play. Still, the warlord pressed on, stepping over his own fallen men. He was not here to win quickly. He was here to end it personally. Eli knew the look in his eyes. He'd seen it before in games where the stakes were higher than gold. Men like that didn't quit. They doubled down until the table was empty. The fight dragged toward the farmhouse. Eli regrouped with Vera inside, reloading with steady hands. He's coming himself, she said. I know, Eli replied. That's the last move I needed. The front door shook once, twice, then burst inward. The warlord filled the frame, rifle one hand, a blade in the other. He stepped inside, the room shrinking around him. You had your chance, he said. Eli's eyes flicked to the small blinking device on the table beside him. That's what I was counting on, Eli said, pressing the button. Outside, the last of the irrigation tanks blew, sending a wave of water and mud flooding the yard. The warlord's ship, still hovering low, were caught in the sudden surge, their engines choking on spray and soil. The guard outside scrambled to retreat. The warlord glanced back just for a heartbeat, and in poker, a heartbeat is all you need. Eli moved first. Vera moved with him, and in that instant the final hand began a new journey. The warlord didn't fall to the ground. He staggered, armor cracked, one knee hitting the mud. Steam rose from his gauntlets where Vera's wrench had struck. Eli stood just out of reach, his short gun steady. The yard around them was a mess of torn crops, broken drones, and flickering fires. You think this ends here? The warlord growled. Eli's face stayed calm. No, he said, I think this ends when you fold. The warlord's visor tilted. Fold. Eli nodded toward the blinking light on the warlord's belt. That's your link, the one tied to your fleet. You triggered your ships to fire if you didn't report back, but I moved the Code, now it's tied to your armor. Warlord's eyes narrowed behind the visor. You bluff, he said, voice low. Eli stepped closer. Do you really want to call me on that? For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the warlord's hand went to the comm and shut it down. He knew in that pause he'd seen something. In Eli's eyes, not a lie but the quiet certainty of a man who never played a hand he couldn't win. You play a dangerous game, farmer, the warlord said. Eli holstered the gun. That's the only kind worth playing. Without another word, the warlord turned, signaling his remaining men to retreat. The ships pulled away, engines spitting mud, shrinking into the night sky until they were gone. Silence settled over the farm. Vera stepped beside Eli, looking at the ruined fields. They'll be back, she said. Eli nodded. Maybe, he said, but we won't be here when they do. 2 days later, the farm was quiet again. Too quiet. Eli stood in the barn, sealing the last of the supply crates. Vera came in, wearing a fresh jacket she'd found among his old things. You really leaving this behind? She asked. Eli glanced at the dusty porch light through the open door. It was never meant to last, he said. The ship was ready, loaded with tools, seed packs, and just enough food to cross into the next system. Vera strapped in without asking where they were going. Anywhere in mind? She asked. Eli keyed the engines. Somewhere. The table's still open, he said. As the ship rose, the farm grew smaller beneath them. The rows of crops faded into lines of shadow. Porch light flickered once, then went out. Vera looked ahead at the black stretch of space. We don't even know what's waiting, she said. That's the point, Eli replied. He eased the throttle forward. The stars slid by, and for the first time in years he smiled. Because this time the game wasn't just about winning, it was about playing.